Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about the third entry in the Shovel Knight Treasure Trove series, Shovel Knight Specter of Torment. This is a prequel to Shovel of Hope, where Specter Knight is tasked by the Enchantress to recruit all of the Knights of No Quarter. We learn through various flashbacks while you play through the game of why Specter Knight is in the position that he's in and why he is in debt to the Enchantress. It is cool as you play through the game and you battle these knights and they eventually join the Enchantress's forces. They slowly fill up the tower, the headquarters where your base is. And you can go and talk to them and they're sitting and having feasts, and then it's fun just talking to all of the locals as the tower starts filling up more with more recruits. I really like the concept of Specter Knight as a character. I like how edgy he is and cool he is. He has this whole aesthetic to him, and in terms of the gameplay, really like flashy, quick, almost anime-esque, I would describe him as. His moveset reflects this very well in that he can slice diagonally through any enemy as long as he is airborne. So most of his combat relies on him jumping up in the air and doing some sort of diagonal slash against the enemy. And if it is an enemy that can't be destroyed in one hit, he'll kind of like bounce off it. So you can almost do like a Shovel Knight pogo off of these enemies as long as you're continuously doing these diagonal slashes against them. Specter Knight is also equipped with the ability to run up walls a small distance, and then he'll kind of do a backflip and fall back down. He is also able to jump off of these walls to do wall jumps. If he runs up the wall and reaches the ledge, then he will do a little flip onto the ledge as well. So there's a lot of platforming revolved around jumping against these walls and running up them. One interesting mechanic that I haven't really seen in another 2D action platformer before is Shovel Knight destroys blocks and he damages walls when he jumps off of the floor or the wall. So if it is breakable, then once you jump off it, then it immediately gets destroyed. And this can either be a benefit or a hindrance, because Specter Knight doesn't really have like a downward attack like Shovel Knight did with his pogo shovel. And so in order to destroy blocks beneath you, you kind of need to get on the blocks and then jump off. Other times this can be a detriment, as some blocks you need to platform on, so if you accidentally destroy them before you're ready to leap onto the next ledge, it can really mess you up. Also, there are certain blocks that just immediately destroy right when you touch them, so they aren't going to be much benefit to you because you just break right through them, and so they're kind of intended more for you to like run up the sides rather than land on the top and destroy them. I really like the items that Specter Knight has available to him in this game. They felt a lot more unique and interesting and fun to use compared to Plague Knight's arsenal. These items in this game are called curios. You are able to purchase these curios by gathering up these red skulls that are hidden throughout the map, and I liked the amount of red skulls that they have in this game compared to the green coins in Plague of Shadows, because in Plague of Shadows there were just so many green coins, it felt impossible to gather them all, whereas in Specter of Torment, these red skulls, there's maybe like about 6 or 7 in each level. It felt manageable in order to get all of them. Once you gather these red skulls, you talk to this red skeleton at the hub base, and you can exchange these red skulls for curios, because he's looking for his wife's skull amongst these red skulls. And so once you do purchase a curio from this skeleton, then he leads you into this little, almost like a test room, where it showcases the item's capabilities, where you're not able to use your basic attack, you just have to use the recently purchased curio, and it gives you a like quick brief little tutorials for you to wrap your head around what exactly the curio does. Some of my favorite curios in this game are, there's one where like you immediately dash towards the nearest enemy in the screen and you do like this slicing motion, which was really cool. Another one makes like a duplicate clone of you that projects forward. One is like a scythe and it like rolls along the floor. An additional really cool thing about these curios is you have the ability to upgrade them for 4,000 gold, and so it was cool to have that additional upgrade path for your weapons, especially for ones that you used a lot. I also used one, and it's basically just like a really strong claw attack, and it was that was the first one that I did upgrade because it just does so much damage and it has such a good range when you upgrade it. I like how it also not only upgrades in the power of the curio, but it also upgrades visually as well to make it look even cooler. Just like all of the other Shovel Knight games, you do have the ability to purchase different gear that changes your color. I didn't really like most of the abilities that this new gear offered to Specter Knight. Probably the best idea of one that I liked is Specter Knight has this ability to grind on rails. He basically like skates on his scythe, and you can do like tricks when you jump up into the air. And there's maybe like 3 or 4 different sections where you are grinding on these rails and facing against enemies. I wish there were more sections of this rail grinding, but you are able to purchase a different colored cloak that allows you to grind anywhere on the ground. And on the surface, this does seem like a really fun and unique idea until you realize how each room in the Shovel Knight games is fairly contained, and so you don't really have a lot of good opportunities to be skating along the floor while you're trying to do platforming and collect red skulls and resources, and so I didn't use it that often. Ultimately, my favorite gear that I did purchase was just purely aesthetic, and it made Specter Knight look really cool. He kind of does like a different running animation. He has this like ghostly trail following him, and so that's what I ended up using in the end, even though it was purely aesthetic. I really do like the story in Specter of Torment compared to the other Shovel Knight games. They seem to start fleshing out the characters even more than before. What with these flashbacks, we find out that Specter Knight's name was Donovan, and we find out a little bit of his backstory and his motivation. Other characters like Rise get a little more of a spotlight, whereas Rise was just purely almost like a little side mini-boss in the first 2 Shovel Knight games. In this one, he kind of becomes a main character. We get the backstory of the Troupple acolyte, the one who's super emphatic about the Troupple King. We get more dialogue from the Black Knight and the Enchantress, and so I do like how they're really increasing the lore in these Shovel Knight games and giving us more backstory for all of these characters. And this being a prequel was really fun because we got to see the origin stories of a lot of these characters and how they wound up the way they are in Shovel of Hope. The level selection in this game is a lot more straightforward than the first 2 Shovel Knight games. Instead of like a Super Mario Bros. 3 overworld where you select these levels and go to side levels, it's more like a level selection screen. Mega Man Zero comes to mind in relation to this, where you just simply talk to the guy in front of the portal and he's just asking you, what level do you want to go to? Here's the reward for it. And so you can, this is cool because you can go against any knight that you choose to and battle in any order that you want to, rather than a progressively more difficult pathway. But this does take something out of the exploration that you had in Shovel of Hope and Plague of Shadows, in that you could like choose your own path and choose when you want to fight these mini bosses or you want to do these side games. There wasn't really like any side levels, any side treasure levels or mini bosses. There is one side thing that you can do in the actual tower of the Enchantress, where you talk to this statue looking thing, and it's almost like a semi-randomly generated tower that you have to climb, but there's an electrical floor slowly rising, and so you have this pressure to climb this tower all the way up to the top as fast as you can without falling into this electrical floor that's slowly rising below you. It is fairly difficult, especially if you don't have all the curios upgraded, especially the one where you just automatically launch yourself to the closest enemy. That really helped pass through some of the more difficult barriers. And I would try to do this little side game quite often. I couldn't remember the reward from it from my first couple playthroughs of this game, so when I finally did conquer that tower climb, only to remember that it just gives you some resources, and by the end of the game, I really didn't need any of these resources. I didn't need any money because I had already purchased all the upgrades and all the gear that I wanted to, so I was a little disappointed that that was the reward. I think the reward should have been something cooler, like maybe you unlock a powerful curio or something like that, because it really is a difficult challenge challenge climbing that tower with the electrical floor rising below you. But the pride of actually overcoming that obstacle is quite rewarding by itself as well. The music in this game is very good. They're almost like remixed versions of Shovel of Hope with an edgier twist. Sometimes they're more like remixed, like techno-y. I don't really know how to describe it, more electronic even. Overall, this game felt significantly shorter than Shovel of Hope and Plague of Shadows. Maybe it's because you're not doing as many of these side things, or maybe because there's not a overworld level selection like in the first two games. Or maybe I just enjoyed this game even more than the first two games, so it felt shorter because I was enjoying myself so much. But regardless, I felt like it wasn't as much of a commitment as the first two games. Not that they were either. Each of these Shovel Knight games takes maybe 3 or 4 hours tops to beat, especially if you have played these games before. Overall, I really just like the gameplay flow in this game. I like the main character, I like the combat, I like how seamless everything feels with these diagonal slashes that you're doing, so you can constantly keep up this momentum, especially if you're really good at climbing the walls and wall jumping and slashing through enemies and utilizing your curios to the best of your abilities. This is the game out of the 3 that I have played this playthrough, I felt like this one is probably my favorite. It also provides the highest ceiling of mastery and flow, where if you really get it down, then it makes you feel like you've really mastered this system and conquered it, and if you understand it, you get rewarded with that seamless flow of gameplay. But we will have to see how the next Shovel Knight game, the next and final Shovel Knight game, Shovel Knight King of Cards, holds up compared to these first 3 Shovel Knight games. I've only played King of Cards once. I remember not liking it as much as Specter Knight. However, I did not play those 2 games back to back my last playthrough of King of Cards. So now I'll be able to more accurately compare these 2 games, because in my head, Specter Knight is my favorite out of the 4, but we'll just have to see with my second playthrough of King of Cards. Overall, though, I am going to give Specter of Torment a 5 out of 5. Simply amazing. That's it for me, though. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Shovel Knight Specter of Torment, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!